For 75 years, the Lord has proved faithful in His work at Emmaus as the college has educated and equipped generations of students to impact the world for Christ. From humble beginnings in a church basement in Toronto to degree programs and regional accreditation in Dubuque, it is clear that God alone has sustained His work. Without His provision of the right people, the necessary funding, and the willing hearts of students to learn of Him, the college would not exist. From the beginning to the present day, the Lord's hand has been in it all. Founder R. Edward Harlow was born and raised in Toronto, Canada. After graduating from Emmaus Bible College and the University of Toronto, he and his wife served as missionaries in the Belgian Congo, working in a Bible school for native Christians. John Smart was born in Scotland and moved to Victoria, British Columbia, at an early age. After several years of service on the Canadian prairie, he went to the West Indies to do evangelistic work. In 1937, he returned to Canada and settled in Toronto, where he served in gospel and Bible conference work and an extensive radio ministry. C. Ernest Hatham was born in Guelph, Ontario. In 1929, he graduated from Emmaus Bible College and began serving the Lord in a range of ministries, pioneer evangelism and Bible conference work all over the North American continent, and gospel broadcasting. Ernie Tatham would say that Ed Harlow first suggested to him and John Smart the idea of a regular Bible school, and it awakened a response in our hearts. I know it did in mine, and I am sure it did in John Smart's too. We started with evening schools. Both John and I felt that Dr. Ed Harlow was the man to tie it all together and to organize it. He was a much better organizer than I was, certainly, so it was birthed as an idea, I believe, of the Holy Spirit, through Dr. Ed Harlow. It was clear the Holy Spirit was in it from the beginning. In the Lord's providence, the three men were all living in or around Toronto in 1941. Dr. Harlow credits John Smart with the idea of Emmaus as the school name, as referenced in Luke 24:13. Two of the Lord's disciples were walking from Jerusalem to the village of Emmaus when the Lord Himself joined them. As they conversed together, He showed them in all the scriptures the things concerning Himself. Luke 24:27. This was the avowed purpose of the school's founders, to open the scriptures and to teach the things concerning Christ. By faith, the three men started with evening classes in Central Hall in fall 1941. Evening school initially included 3 40-minute lectures. Mr. Tatham taught Old Testament, Mr. Smart taught New Testament, and Dr. Harlow taught children's ministry and Sunday school work. The idea was to offer 2 hours of teaching one night a week without any frills other than textbooks, homework, and examinations. The response to this idea was overwhelming. The night school quickly enrolled 144 total students with average attendance of 100. In order to accommodate more students, branch classes were organized in various cities in Ontario, as well as Detroit, Michigan. After the initial year of night classes, the staff created lecture material in the form of correspondence lessons that could be sent out to young people who would profit from systematic Bible teaching but were unable to attend a branch class. John Smart and Ed Harlow created the first 2 correspondence courses with an overwhelming response. Within 7 years, there were 1,250 correspondence students. The blessing received from these systematic Bible courses led to early discussions about the possibility of a full-time study program. After much prayer, an announcement was made in 1945 that day school classes would commence in September of that year. Although World War II had not yet ended, the men believed that at least a small group of students could be enrolled. Dr. Harlow commented that if they attracted a dozen students that year, they would be satisfied. Before long, however, it became apparent that there was widespread interest in day school studies, and over 50 students applied for admission. Others joined later, particularly former servicemen, and total enrollment for the first year of the day school program was 80 students. Evening and day school classes were held in the basement of Central Hall in Toronto, which quickly became insufficient to meet the needs of the rapidly growing school. The Lord soon provided a more suitable location in the former Harcourt Hall of Toronto. Through His faithful provision, Emmaus had a new home at half of the price of other locations the staff had considered. The new building had a main auditorium that could seat 300 people, as well as space for lecture rooms, libraries, and the correspondence work. Classes were first held at 81 Harcourt Avenue in 1946, with a student body of 175. A high percentage of students were from the United States, but every province of Canada was also represented. In 1947, the desire to make the one-year course available to more Christian youth, coupled with the immediate overcrowding of the Harcourt building, led to the decision to offer the one-year course in Chicago. Local church leaders in Chicago purchased Thornton Hall at 69th and Normal in Chicago. The third floor of the building provided an auditorium and library space for students. The first-year program was taught in Chicago and Toronto, and the senior division program, an additional 2 years of study, was offered only in Toronto. During the first year of offerings in 2 schools, 166 students registered in Toronto and 48 registered in Chicago. Bill McDonald, a former correspondence school student, and Ben Tuniga were the initial core teachers for the Chicago school, while Dr. Harlow, Ernie Tatham, and John Smart continued as core teachers in Toronto, with occasional visits to teach in Chicago. Dr. Harlow served as the principal for both schools. In those years, Emmaus students enjoyed the ministry of many visiting Bible teachers, including Alfred P. Gibbs, George Landis, David Long, Neil Fraser, Peter Pell, Richard Hill, August Van Ryan, Charles Van Ryan, and Harold Harper. In 1947, the Accrediting Association of Bible Institutes and Bible Colleges was established at a meeting of Bible school leaders at Winona Lake, Indiana. In 1948, Dr. Harlow attended the Accrediting Association meeting, and Emmaus Bible School was named a charter member of the association at the intermediate level, which allowed for attendance of non-high school graduates. The 2 school sites continued simultaneously for several years. As the correspondence school grew, assembly leaders in Chicago became burdened for a larger facility with room for student dormitories. They began to pray in faith, and in the summer of 1953, a casual conversation between Bill McDonald and a friend from Moody Correspondence School led to Bill and a board member touring the Oak Park YMCA building, which was up for sale. Bill stated, "I shall never forget the strange feeling I had as we mounted the front steps. It seemed that there was a quiet assurance that this was it, that one day Emmaus would be located here. We wandered through the building, and although it was old and run down, we saw great possibilities. It seemed ideal for our purposes." In October of 1953, after months of negotiations, the building was purchased for $90,000, $35,000 less than the original asking price. The building at 69th and Normal was sold January 1, 1954, without even having to post a for sale sign. The school rented the building from the new owners through May of 1954 to finish out the school year before moving to the new building. In the midst of these transitions and negotiations, a conversation began about the possibility of merging the Toronto and Chicago schools. When the Chicago school acquired the property in Oak Park, this movement gained momentum. On January 23, 1954, the executive committee voted to combine the 2 schools in Oak Park and sell the Toronto building. Bill McDonald, recording the events of this significant year in Emmaus history, wrote, "Thus, step by step, the Lord led in the purchase of the Oak Park building, the sale of the Chicago building, the amalgamation of the two schools, and finally the sale of the Toronto school building in April 1954. This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. The late 1950s were a season of change at Emmaus. In 1958, Dr. Ed Harlow left his position as president to devote his time to overseas correspondence work, and Bill McDonald was appointed the second president of Emmaus Bible School. The school invited Chester Woodring and Daniel Smith to join the faculty. With dormitory facilities at capacity, the school began to pray for housing facilities for faculty members, office staff, and married students. The Emmaus newsletter from December 1959 to January 1960 tells the story of moving forward by faith in the Lord's provision. On September 18, notice reached the school that the Groveland Apartments building was for sale. Just the evening before, September 17, the Executive Committee of the Board of Trustees had decided to make a diligent search for additional school facilities. Immediately, a tour of the building was made, and the three EBS trustees, Messrs. Houston and Humphrey and President McDonald, unanimously agreed that its location was ideal and it had great potential value to the school. The Lord was clearly in the midst of the negotiations. The end result was that Emmaus was granted its offer on the building at a price $4,000 less than what was anticipated. The 1960s brought continued growth. The school grew from 108 students in 1961 to 147 students in 1964. Dormitories were full, so students were housed in the Groveland Apartments, Oak Manor, a hotel near the school, and the Flint family home. The 1960s also brought significant personnel changes. In 1965, Bill McDonald submitted his resignation as president, although he remained on the board for several years, and founder John Smart was named the third president of Emmaus Bible School. The school was again experiencing enrollment growth, and additional resources were needed in both facilities and personnel to accommodate the growing student body. To address personnel needs, additional faculty members including Jim Catron, Bob Logan, Dave Glock, and Jack Fish joined the Emmaus family. The early 1970s were years of growth. Enrollment grew with 179 students in 1973 and 185 students in 1974. More individuals joined the Emmaus family, including Dr. Dave Reed, Ken Fleming, and Dr. Gene Young. In 1974, the college started the first annual Emmaus Choir Tour under the direction of Registrar and Choir Director Bob Logan. Choir tours would be a memorable part of the Emmaus experience for many that year and in the years to come. The 1970s brought significant loss to the Emmaus family as well. In 1975, President John Smart suffered a heart attack and suddenly passed into glory. The news shocked the extended Emmaus family. Mr. Smart had been the picture of health and was active in the Lord's work both at Emmaus and as a missionary statesman. The executive vice president, Dan Smith, was named acting president in 1975 and then president in 1976. In the late 1970s, the school experienced some challenges. Enrollment peaked in 1975 with 185 students and then declined toward the end of the decade. Fewer students meant reduced financial resources, which served as a consistent reminder of the school's utter dependence on God. In spite of these challenges, Emmaus continued to faithfully teach the things concerning himself and provide the unique Emmaus experience that has characterized the school since the beginning. The 1980s was a decade of continued dependence upon the Lord. The school faced two major challenges: an effort to achieve accreditation with the Accrediting Association of Bible Colleges and the need for expanded facilities. Although Emmaus was a charter member of the Accrediting Association of Bible Colleges, Bill McDonald had withdrawn the school from associate membership in 1963 due to concerns that the AABC might require Emmaus to offer general education in addition to biblical studies coursework. President Dan Smith and Dean of Education Dave Glock recognized the value of accreditation and the potential benefit for Emmaus students and began the 8-year accreditation process in 1979. School personnel rolled up their sleeves and invested literally thousands of hours toward achieving this goal. A second major issue in the early 1980s was the need for expanded facilities. The Oak Park facilities were full to overflowing, and property values in the area were so high that it was no longer feasible to purchase land for further expansion. Dan Smith describes the situation. "We were landlocked at Oak Park. We were bumping our heads on the ceiling. We were full. It became apparent at the board level that if the school was going to grow, and particularly if we were going to add any programs, we would have to relocate. So, for 2 years, we looked. We looked at places from central Minnesota to Nashville, Tennessee, from Omaha, Nebraska to western Pennsylvania. It was terribly discouraging. Most of them were so run down, they were institutions that had closed, that were in desperate condition. The administration wrote to the Roman Catholic Diocese in Chicago to ask if they had any campuses for sale. The initial inquiry did not yield any results. But because of it, a prospectus of a Dominican campus in Dubuque landed on the desk of Dave Allison, the school's business manager. Dave Allison, Dan Smith, Dave Glock, and board member Merrill Oster came to look at the Dubuque campus. The group walked away feeling confident that this was the place the Lord intended for Emmaus. Although appraised at nearly $23 million, the Emmaus Board of Trustees offered just $1.7 million for the property. Dan Smith recalls a meeting in 1983 with Father Dyer, the treasurer of the Dominican Order in the U.S. The school had just become aware of several new bids on the Dubuque facility, and Dan expressed his concern that the order would take a higher bid. Father Dyer said, "When we built that place 20 years ago, we dedicated to the glory of God. We'd rather you have it." With the cost of the move, the school owned the Dubuque property for just under $2 million. In the words of Dan, that's a modern-day miracle. Because of the Lord's faithful provision through His people who gave sacrificially, the college was completely debt-free within a year of moving to the new campus. With the move to Dubuque in 1984 came a name change to Emmaus Bible College. In 1986, the college achieved its goal of accreditation with the Accrediting Association of Bible Colleges, and Dan awarded the college's first bachelor degrees. 2 years later, the college reached an enrollment milestone of 200 resident students. The 1980s also brought more new faces to the campus. Faculty members David McLeod, John Rush, Jim Dunkerton, and Keith Leverance joined the Emmaus family. In the late 1980s, the college experienced enrollment declines over several years. By fall 1991, the college enrolled just 134 students, which created significant financial challenges. Based on administrative recommendations, the Board of Trustees took courageous steps to address the issue. Two significant responses were the addition of general education offerings and the first academic major in addition to biblical studies. In 1993, the college added an elementary teacher education program to prepare students to teach in Christian schools, churches, and homeschool settings. In 1997, the Iowa State Department of Education granted approval to Emmaus's teacher education program, allowing graduates to receive an Iowa teacher license and teach in public or private schools. The success of the elementary education program led to the addition of other majors, including youth ministries and intercultural studies. In 2000, the Computer Systems Management Program was launched in conjunction with the construction of Smith Hall. The new facility included a state-of-the-art computer classroom and lab, as well as much-needed office space, maintenance facilities, dormitories, and expanded gymnasium and locker room facilities. The turn of the century brought a change in leadership. After serving as president for nearly 25 years, Dan Smith stepped down to begin a new role as chancellor of the college. Ken Daughters, an Emmaus Bible faculty member, was named the 5th president of Emmaus Bible College. The college also began to pursue regional accreditation to open new doors for student financial aid, transfer of credits, and ease of admission to graduate programs. By God's grace and provision, full accreditation was achieved in 2006. Regional accreditation served as public confirmation of the quality of an Emmaus education. The achievement of regional accreditation supported the addition of academic programs beyond those typically offered at Bible colleges, including counseling psychology, business administration, nursing, camp ministry, secondary and ESL education, and general studies. In keeping with its mission, Emmaus continued to require a full Bible theology major for all bachelor degree graduates, regardless of their other fields of study. In 2013, Ken Daughters transitioned from the office of president, having faithfully served Emmaus for 23 years. Following an intensive search, the college appointed Phil Boom as the college's 6th president. Under President Boom's leadership, the college has continued expansion of academic offerings, including recent additions in applied mathematics, computer science, cross-cultural nursing, and pre-professional health sciences. Efforts to increase accessibility of Emmaus programs include the recent launch of Emmaus Distance Learning and a degree completion program designed for adult learners. Through God's faithfulness, the college has educated and equipped generations of men and women to impact the world for Christ. Alumni serve all over the globe, bringing the gospel to closed countries and local communities. They serve in local churches, teaching God's people the things concerning Himself. They serve at camps across North America that provide families and young people with opportunities for growth in Christ. They seek to raise godly children. Emmaus graduates have started their own Bible schools and youth programs. They serve as salt and light in the workplace, as light for Christ through their strong work ethics and integrity. We thank God for 75 years and pray for His continued blessing on the next 75.